What happens in human design when you have a strategy to respond and an emotional authority? So that would mean you are either a generator or a manifesting generator with a defined sacral, but you also then have an emotional authority. So I asked in my Facebook group the other day things that confuse you about human design, and this was one of the things that came up. So, how do you actually work with this? Because we're looking at the two centers that actually govern this. The strategy to respond comes from having a defined sacral, and the emotional authority comes from having a defined emotional solar plexus. So, this doesn't apply to all generators and manifesting generators because um, if you're a pure manifesting generator or generator, it means you just have the sacral and then your authority is governed by the sacral as well. So, in some instances, that might be easier for people to understand because their strategy and authority is actually governed by the same center and they're just looking for that pure sacral response for their decision making. Because when you combine your strategy and your authority, is actually the piece that's giving you the information about how your system, how you're designed to best make decisions. So if you have a defined emotional solar plexus, it overwrites the sacral in terms of kind of hierarchy so that that center becomes your authority and you have to add the two together. So before we can add the two together, let's have a little recap of what they are individually. So the strategy to respond is essentially this center, the sacral, which is your life force energy. It's the main motor center in your chart, which is actually generating energy, which is why you are either generator, manifesting generator. The name kind of comes from this sacral generating energy so that you can go out there and do things and generate things in the world. So, what this strategy to respond is doing is helping you to understand what you have the energy for or not. So, it's a kind of binary thing. It's a yes no response. It's a uh-huh, response. It's a sort of in the moment response. So, you have a sort of gut feeling. People who do have sacral authority or trying to tune into their sacral, I often suggest like flipping a coin if they've missed the sacral response to kind of help them get back on track with what was that initial feeling that you get. Um, so without going too much into it, the respond piece is trying to get you to respond to things outside of you. So you're not initiating things, you're not sitting there trying to create things from scratch, pull things out of thin air. You're responding to life. You see something, you have a conversation, something that kind of maybe a bus goes past with a poster on, and it gives you, your system, some kind of response of whether you want to do something or not. Often a little trick as well for working with the strategy to respond is instead of having open-ended questions, is you have more finite questions. So instead of what would you like for dinner? That's a difficult response sometimes for these people. If you start to give them options of would you like Chinese? Would you like pizza? Would you like a curry? That gets a natural kind of response. So that's what we're looking for. We're not trying to pluck things out the air and make things up. Something outside of us kind of activates a response within our sacral. And what that is telling you is whether you have the energy for that at that moment or not, and whether it is correct for you at that moment or not. Okay. So when you have a pure, a sacral authority, that's kind of the end of the decision making process. Now, if you add in the emotional aspect of the authority, you have to really understand what's going on with this center here, with this emotional solar plexus. So there's another layer of work to do to understand your decision making process and understand your human design in general. Now, I am going to do some workshops and a lot more on this center in particular because if you do have a defined emotional solar plexus, it's really important you understand what is going on in there how it impacts you and how it impacts those around you. So, what we are going to look at briefly, but what I would suggest you do is you go and want to look at it in more detail, is also what channel, what gates activated you having a defined emotional solar plexus. So the reason a channel, a center, sorry, is defined is because of a channel, so two gates in opposite centers are both switched on, they create a channel, and that creates the energy in the center. So, whatever channel is switching on your emotional solar plexus, um, actually influences how your emotional wave plays out. So, when you have a defined emotional solar plexus, our emotions actually act as waves. We have highs and lows. They are not, our emotions are not consistent with the energy that we are creating with our emotions are not consistent. They are waves. And the channel that defines the center governs how that wave plays out. Now, you might have more than one, in which case you would lean into all of them, ones that you have. I have 3740, so my emotional wave behaves like this. So, I have a little build, a little dip, a little build, but overall we have a big build because we haven't completely dissipated all of the energy, and then we have the crash, and then the process starts again. This wave is a much more kind of sharper ups and downs of the emotional wave. And so, first part of this whole process will be doing the work on understanding what your emotional wave looks like, how your emotional patterns play out, how your emotions feel, and almost being able to witness them. So, we talk about responding, but what trying to make sure we don't do is react. Okay, so actually understanding your emotional wave is a whole other piece, but it needs to be done so that you can add it into what is the sacral response. Because what the sacral response is really doing is it's actually giving you your yes, no answer based on where your emotional wave is. So the sacral will give you a different answer potentially if it's up here in your wave versus down here in your wave versus it's neutral in your wave. So the reason when you have an emotional authority, it says there is no truth in the now. What that's trying to tell you is because the now is influenced by where you are on your emotional wave. So the key piece for this is getting to know your wave, understanding the importance and the impact of the decision that you're making, right? So if someone's asked you if you want a cup of tea, if someone's asked you what you want for dinner, if someone is asking you if you want to go to Glastonbury next year, if you're trying to buy a car, if you're trying to move house, right? The importance and the impact of the decision is how much of the timing piece you add in. So when you have the sacral response, if you are able to witness your emotions and what is happening in the scale of your emotions, if you're in a high, if you're in a low, if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're, whatever the emotional impact is on that decision, you can start to ask yourself the question, is now the time to actually give that answer? That might be the answer that I'm getting in this moment, but would I have given the same answer yesterday? Would I give the same answer in an hour's time? Would I give the same answer tomorrow? And that's where the waiting piece. So when you read about having emotional authority, it says wait 24 hours. And that's just like a guide. The timing piece is actually, for me, directly proportional to the importance, the impact of the decision you're making. You know, if someone asks you for a cup of tea or what you want for dinner, don't wait 24 hours. Um, like nothing would ever happen. But the actual question that was asked in the Facebook group was around replying to social media posts. Now, what I would say again is we are designed to respond. So something outside of us creates a response. We see a social media post and it might give us an idea to go and write our own post. We might want to respond and reply to the post itself. So what I would say is, like I say, the key piece is understanding where you are in this wave at the time you see the social media post. Because if you can witness and you are aware of and you know how you're feeling, you can start to understand and predict and work out how that might influence or change your reply, your answer. So it's not that you shouldn't reply. It's about awareness. I mean, everything's about awareness, isn't it? Like, are you going to write some snippy, snarky comment because something else just happened and you happen to be having a bad day? And actually, on a different day, you'd write a different comment. So it is working through this timing piece. You know, if you get a text message from somebody and they've annoyed you and you were already annoyed, are you going to react and answer that text message in that moment? And the decision that you're making to do that is actually going to be influenced by your wave. And if you slept on it and you replied tomorrow, would you give them a different answer? So that's kind of how I explain it. I have this myself. I am an emotional manifesting generator. So the key pieces for me is understanding what the response means in isolation to start with. So understanding that we're not trying to, pull something from the air. We are designed to respond to life around us, right? So understanding the sacral response, but then understanding and witnessing and being aware of your own emotions. Like we're not trying to necessarily change whatever those emotions are. We're not saying don't be happy, don't be sad, don't be angry, don't be whatever and suppressing our emotions. We're working through them, and that's like a different video, a different topic. Um, but what we want to do is understand what impact our emotions are having on that particular decision in that particular moment. And like I said, you know, the sacral is giving you your feelings based on where that wave is. So getting to know your wave, understanding it, understanding the importance, the impact of the decision, and adding in your own timing piece. So if you want to write a social media post and something has activated you, you've read something, you've seen something, you've got a response, you feel very passionate about something, you know, if you can understand the difference between passionate and reactive or angry, then you can start to understand, do you actually post and put that social media post out in the moment? Because it was passion that's activated you. You feel very passionate about something, you want to keep the energy, you want to put it out. If you're not sure, and you're not sure if it's passion or someone's actually, activated you, triggered you, and you're annoyed, and you're actually reacting rather than responding. It might be you write the social media post, but you don't actually put it out. You just write it in a notebook, write it in your notes on your phone or something, and then you check in with it tomorrow, read it again, and if you still feel the same way, then you can post it. So that's why I sort of say add in your own timing piece because there's all different elements of it. There's the you having the response, you kind of harnessing that, understanding what that means, but it doesn't mean you have to share that with the world at that moment. Um, like if somebody asks you somewhere and you're not sure, you say, can I get back to you? Can I let you know tomorrow? If someone does want you to go to, I don't know why Glastonbury's in my head, um, go there. If you're not sure, see, can I let you know tomorrow? I'll sleep on it. Um, because what you're trying to do is, do you feel the same about something? Here, 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 here. Here, 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 here. Like, do you have the same response? Do you have the same feeling? Um, and that's what the marrying of the pieces are together, really. You're sort of adding the two pieces together. So understanding how this center works, understanding how this center works, and then marrying the two. And I know I'm repeating myself, but it is really about the importance, the impact of the decision. If you do reply to that text message, is that going to damage that relationship? If you do post something on social media and it wasn't actually passion, it was annoyance and anger or something, are you going to regret it tomorrow? So that's my kind of starting place of how to explain how you add the two together. I'd love to know how that lands, if that makes sense, if that helps you. Um, like I said, the actual understanding of your wave itself and how to witness your emotions and how your emotions impact others, especially when you have a defined emotional solar plexus and an undefined and it comes together. That's a whole other topic that I'm going to be doing some more things about. If you want to know more, then I have a free Facebook group. I have two free Facebook groups, the alignment edit and your intro to HD. So your intro to HD is a bit more sort of information based, learning based, the actual how to understand it. The alignment edit is more than how do you bring that out into the world, into your life and business. So you can find me over on Facebook, and my YouTube channel is actually also called the Alignment Edit. So let me know how that lands, if that helps. Um, the two pieces are understanding the sacral response, but also the biggest piece, really, for anyone with an emotional authority, is really starting to look into, lean into what does that mean for you, so that you can add the two together.